when Jesus is on that cross, he's saying, Mother, this is thy son. Son, this is thy mother. And I also think he kind of looks to me and says, Isabel, these are your brothers and sisters. And that's kind of from a personal perspective why I feel I need to be there and do my bit, even if I haven't got the time.
And you know, for me as well, when you said about this, the spiritual side of it, for me, you know, Calvary, I never thought of it like that. But also when you think about in the Garden of Gethsemane, what is it what Jesus said? Could you not give me 1 hour? Could you
Absolutely,
not give me 1 hour?
Yes.
You know, and I know, you know, that when we are in front of God, when we die, that it's not just about what we did, it's about what we didn't do. And I don't think we'll be able to say, I didn't have the time.
Hello and welcome to this podcast series. Today we're going to be looking at what's stopping you praying outside an abortion centre. Now I know initially what might come into people's minds nowadays is, well, isn't that illegal? There's buffer zones. But it's not buffer zones that are stopping people joining their local 40 Days for Life or joining in a Good Counsel Network prayer vigil. Because there's many people still praying just outside buffer zones. There's many people outside buffer zones offering help to pregnant women and just sharing the pro-life message with people. And we need more people to join this. So we thought it would be good to have a little chat today on this podcast series and look at what are the reasons people give for not joining these vigils outside the buffer zone, because of course that is perfectly legal. And even those people who have got into trouble with the law unjustly inside abortion centre buffer zones, nobody will be getting into trouble outside the buffer zones. So let's have a little talk and look at why people aren't joining pro-life vigils outside buffer zones. And I'm joined by the lovely Rachel Mackenzie. So thank you for being with us again, Rachel.
It's a great pleasure to be here.
So what are your thoughts? And are there any kind of excuses that come into your mind when you think about taking part in 40 Days for Life? I know you've been a member of 40 Days for a long time now. And I'm sure, like a lot of people, you must get temptations not to take part because it's not something that we really enjoy doing.
Yeah, I really don't enjoy it. I don't think, it's not about feelings. That's just come to my head then. It really isn't about feelings. But I know whenever you send the email out, I always tease you back and I go, but I haven't got the time. Yeah, I'm too busy. And what does busy stand for? B-U-S-Y, being under Satan's yoke. Ooh. And actually, if we make the time, it's incredible how God gives you the time back. And he really does, you know, that give an hour there and suddenly that job that felt like 3 hours is done in an hour. So, yeah.
And I think for me, I try and sort of maybe try and really kind of personalise the issue. So what I'm thinking of is I kind of think, well, if it was my sister going for an abortion or my daughter or my best friend, would I really not be able to manage like 1 hour in the next 40 Days for Life to go there? And I kind of think we can think of it as like someone else's problem. But once we sort of think, well, this is actually, you know, somebody's sister or somebody's daughter that is going there for this life-altering and life-ending situation, can we not spend 1 hour to help them? Yeah. And I think also just looking at it from a spiritual sense, you know, as Christians, I think that abortion centres are like the modern day Calvary. You know, this is where innocents are being killed. Just like on the cross, Jesus, the most innocent person to have ever existed, was crucified. This is what's happening at modern day abortion centres. And if we look to what Mary did when her son was being crucified, she didn't stay at home and just think about what was happening. She didn't go to the temple and just pray there. She actually went out in public and stood at the foot of her son's cross and prayed there. And I think, you know, we need to kind of like remember that from a spiritual perspective. Because I kind of think when Jesus is on that cross, he's saying, Mother, this is thy son. Son, this is thy mother. And I also think he kind of looks to me and says, Isabel, these are your brothers and sisters. And that's kind of from a personal perspective why I feel I need to be there and do my bit, even if I haven't got the time.
And you know, for me as well, when you said about the spiritual side of it, for me, you know, Calvary, I never thought of it like that. But also when you think about in the Garden of Gethsemane, what is it what Jesus said? Could you not give me 1 hour? Could you
Absolutely,
not give me 1 hour?
yes.
You know, and I know, you know, that when we are in front of God, when we die, that it's not just about what we did, it's about what we didn't do. And I don't think we'll be able to say, I didn't have the time to Jesus.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think people will often say, along with the time, is sometimes the distance. And I suppose that's a sort of similar thing. Oh, it's too far for me to go. And I think, you know, maybe kind of sort of similar arguments can help counteract that one. You know, it might take quite a long time to travel further, but if we realise the difference that it can make to somebody. I mean, I know when I've been outside abortion centres, I've met people who've travelled all the way from Ireland. I've met people, I remember meeting a couple once who'd come all the way from Poland to get an abortion. Now, if women are willing to travel that far to get an abortion, can we not travel to meet them there? And in a spiritual sense, maybe make up for that, you know, that the distance they're travelling to do something that is bad, we're going to travel that far to try and meet them there and help them.
Do you know, like I say, I always tease you and I always go, it's too far. I moved house, and the first thing I said to Isabel was, I moved house, I won't be able to do 40 days anymore, and I'm a lot further away. You know, on a bad day, I'm an hour and a half away. But I've never thought of it like that, and actually that's going to make my car journey easier. Thinking about how many people travel to get to an abortion centre, can I put the extra mile in? You know, and I was very blessed today. I was on 40 days today, and I finished the shift, and the person that took over me was doing a 2-hour stint, was, you know, a lovely woman, Natanya from Taunton. How far has she travelled to be part of the Birmingham 40 days?
And I think those people that do that bring real graces on the campaign. And again, like, you know, another reason that people will often say that they can't come is to do with their health. And obviously that is a matter of personal discernment. Only that person will know, you know, is my health too bad to go and join a 40 Days for Life? And obviously you have to be sensible about that. But I remember one lady I used to know, she was you know, quite an elderly lady, and she would always take the first shift of the campaign, so that would be the 8 o'clock in the morning shift. And it wasn't until she'd been doing it for about 3 years that I realised this lady who struggled to walk, was, like I say, was a very good age, had to travel on buses. She would get up at 5 in the morning to be there at 8 o'clock because she had to kind of wait for all these different buses and connections. And I was like, why ever didn't you tell me you could have done a later shift? And she said, no, I want to do my bit. You know, and are people realising the spiritual nature of this and the grace that they win by maybe putting in those efforts and overcoming, you know, what it might be a health problem and maybe bringing a chair to sit on even if they have got bad health and things. That is really what makes the campaign so successful.
Well, he uses all the suffering, doesn't he, God? And he uses all the sacrifices. And it's all those sacrifices that add up to something, you know, for the blessings to be, you know, poured over us.
Mm-hmm. And I think also that sometimes when I'm talking to people about why they maybe have hesitations about coming, you know, and I suppose I'm in a kind of blessed position because I talk to a lot of the people because I organise the rota. Quite a lot of people who actually help out with the 40 Days for Life, they don't necessarily all come from like pro-life families. They're not surrounded by a lot of people who are pro-life. And that can sometimes be quite a difficult thing to overcome. You know, I know men who are part of this campaign who've got wives who've got quite different views on abortion. And equally, we've got wives who've got husbands who don't share their views. I know some students who come along who say, my parents don't know I'm pro-life. You know, they found it quite difficult to talk about this issue. And sometimes they're kind of worried that, you know, joining a campaign might start some kind of disagreement within a family, you know, and that can be quite a hard thing to you know, overcome, I think.
Yeah, I think it's overcoming that fear, isn't it? You know, and I'm one for letters, but FEAR, fear, false evidence appearing real, the whole world will fall out with us, you know, but those students and those people you're on about, it's like, feel the fear and do it anyway. You know, that we have to be courageous.
Yes, and even if there is some kind of, you know, bad consequence because of this, maybe we do have a disagreement with somebody we live with, or things might be a bit uncomfortable with our parents or our child or whoever it might be. I always think what we lose here, we gain in heaven. God won't be outdone by the generosity that we show him in putting him first and his work before anything else. And I think it's maybe good to look at it again from that kind of spiritual sense.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I know as well for me, when I first started 40 Days, the barrier that I had, the wall that I had to overcome, was thinking that I looked like some sort of religious maniac, you know, holding your beads. You know, I just thought, oh my gosh, this is embarrassing. It was about pride and ego. That's what it was really about. And I'd just have my beads in my pocket, trying to whisper my prayers, and I'd be with somebody that, would be saying them how I would feel like they were shouting them, but they weren't, they were just saying them. And I do remember the first time I thought, I'm called to follow the cross. I'm called to stand up for my faith. And I pulled my rosary beads out of my pocket and thought, no, this is who I am. And this is my identity. And I'm proud of it. And I started doing the rosary, and this woman walked past and she just said, I've needed a sign all day. And it was my beads coming out of my pocket. So from that day, nobody's ever said anything about my beads since, but they're left out.
Yes.
Because, it's a sign for people.
I do think, like you're saying, fear is such a common one. Sometimes it's just kind of fear of the unknown if they haven't ever been part of a vigil. There's just sort of that nervous feeling of like, well, I don't really know what to expect when I get there, and just be feeling quite nervous. Or sometimes I think it can be, fear of somebody getting angry. And let's be honest, I know sometimes, I have been outside the abortion centre or, outside the buffer zone, and there might be somebody walking past, or sometimes a car. I remember there used to be a car that would drive past pretty much every day, and there'd be this man that would shout out of the car, "You vile pig." And it kind of almost made me inwardly chuckle because it sounded such a kind of like posh insult. But what I always felt is God is signposting me to who needs prayer. Yeah. It's like if somebody's really angry, this is God's way of saying, this is who I need you to pray for today. Not that you have to go and say that to the person, oh, I'm praying for you. That's passive aggressive. Yeah. But just inwardly think, okay, this is who I need to turn my mind to on my prayers. This man or woman walking past, this person in the car who was obviously, feeling very angry about something. That's who I need to pray for. And just think of it in that way, really.
Yeah. And I think it's about like anything that we exercise, whether it's your muscles, when you first start, it's painful. But the more you do it, the fear just disappears, and the anger disappears. So when I first started, it felt like every single hour that I was there, that somebody would shout something or scream something. And then now it's so rare that it happens because I think, Satan knows I'm not bothered.
Yes.
I'm not bothered by it, so why bother doing it to her anymore?
And I think also people can maybe just be a bit frightened about conversations, thinking I'm not going to know what to say, or am I going to say the wrong thing? And that's not an irrational fear. We do need to kind of like make sure that we're prepared. But I think that is the answer. Just to strategize before you go, I always think we think abortion days that we run as March for Life are helpful for that. But there's lots of podcasts and books and things to learn. And also to start with when you go, certainly for the campaign that we run in Birmingham, you'll be teamed up with somebody who's more experienced and they would be the one leading a conversation. So primarily to start with, your role is to be there in prayer. Yeah. So I think, in a way, if you're not sure what to say, don't let that put you off because your job is to be a prayerful presence to start with, not to kind of like engage and have long debates with people.
Yeah. It always amazes me how many men are on the campaign. When we did the 40 days, when you did the launch the other week, I was looking, the audience, and how many men are there? Because I think for men, often they think, well, should I be part of this?
Yes, I think it is worth bringing that up because that can be quite a reason that people think, oh, I don't want to get involved because I know I've had men contact me saying, well, if I am going to get involved, make sure you team me up with a woman. That's not the case at all. We've had actually more women who have decided to continue a pregnancy because a man has offered support to them, because it can be so transformative to meet a man who for once doesn't actually want something back. He's not trying to get something out of this woman. He just genuinely cares. Yeah. And I think if you're a good man who genuinely cares, the world needs to know it. And that's a great place to be, to act and to show that love. Yeah. I do think that quite a lot of the times people, like you were just saying about maybe just feeling a bit awkward about praying in public. Sometimes people can sort of fall into two camps on this issue. Either they're thinking, oh, I'm worried that, people are going to see me. Maybe even like, if it's their own locality, might be my own neighbours or friends walking past or work colleagues or whatever. What will they think? Or else I have sometimes people saying to me, well, I could only come for an evening shift. Nobody's going to see me. What's the point? And in a way, I kind of think the answer is the same to both of these kind of problems. And that is that we need to remember ultimately that we've got an audience of one, God. you know, and it's him that matters. So if you're kind of thinking, yeah, but what will this or that person think of me?
Yeah.
You need to say, well, ultimately what matters is, what will God think of me? And if you're thinking, well, no one's going to see me, you know, it's like, well, God sees you, you know.
Yeah.
And again, it's that spiritual element of recognizing that is the truth. And if, like I was saying, that, you know, this is the modern day Calvary, will God look down from that cross and see you standing at the foot of the cross?
Yeah.
And there's no replacement for you.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of think, you know, each individual has to kind of answer that call within themselves. Could I do something, even if it's just 1 hour? Could I do that one thing?
And I think from a me being post-abortive myself, so coming from it from that angle, and I speak to a lot of post-abortive women, often we feel that, well, we're a bit of a hypocrite because we're not just standing here, we've been inside there, you know, and this isn't going to bring our children back. But I think it's the best place we can be to honour our children and to honour who they were and that they mattered. I'm standing for you today. I didn't stand on you the day of the abortion, but I'm standing up for you now. And I'm, you know, because there is no time with God. So I think it's not only should we be there, you know, because of the hypocritical voice in our head going, oh, we shouldn't. We have a right to be there.
I think it's a really helpful thing to bring up, because I think people who haven't been through abortion might not even be aware that somebody would be thinking that. And like you say, it is a totally irrational thing to be thinking. You know, it's like if someone has overcome a drug problem, we would say they're a great person to warn youngsters about the dangers of drugs. You know, in any other situation, they would be the person put to the front saying, yes, you're the one who should be telling people because you're the one who really knows. And you can be the best advocates. You're certainly not going to be judgmental, which is sometimes something that's levelled at people who go and pray. Or were you just there to be judgmental? Absolutely not. You know, so many of our volunteers have been through that themselves. And have come out the other side to say, you know, this didn't help me. This didn't help any aspect of my life.
And they can always stand there with that and add that in their conversations. When you're standing here judging, you know, to be able to say, well, I'm part of this campaign because I'm not judged, because I've had abortions, which is often met with anger from somebody else who tells me I'm a liar. Because they just can't believe or perceive that why would you be standing there? Or, well, it was okay for you. Well, it was never okay for me. It was never okay for my children. So I think, you know, the more post-abortive people are standing outside, the better. And I can't big up 40 Days enough. I have never once felt judged, you know, by you know, yourself and those that I pray with.
I do think one of the things I've heard from other people is that they may be actually worried that they might be judged by work colleagues. I'm not talking about people who've been through abortion, but just anyone volunteering to come and join 40 Days for Life. Sometimes people have said, but what if my work finds out? You know, could my job be at risk? You know, because we sometimes do hear things, you know, if you, you know, you hear cases of somebody even putting a pro-life tweet out nowadays and suddenly a work colleague finds out and they're investigated. And I think that is a kind of, again, something that, you know, can be a real fear. But I think it's really sad if that stops somebody doing something which is a perfectly legal and a really compassionate thing to be doing. And I think, you know, you were sort of talking earlier about maybe, like, you know, reflecting on what we, you know, at the end of our lives. I think when we get to the end of our lives, you know, you were saying it's not just what we do and what we don't do, but everything will be on that table before God. And that's something that we will never be ashamed of, to say, like, you know, I didn't think, oh, the most important thing in my life is my work or my reputation or my position or my status. The most important thing in my life was following you, Lord.
Absolutely. You know, a friend of mine, we were having a conversation with a husband and we were encouraging him to come to March for Life. And at the end, he said, you know what, because we knew we were just about, like, getting through, he said, I'll pray about it. And his wife turned around and said, yeah, let me know if Jesus says, no, I don't want you to go to March for Life. You know, and I think that same rule could be used, you know, for 40 days. Don't tell me you're going away and prayed about it. You're not meant to be there, because if you did pray about it quite loud and quite clearly, you're going to hear, be there. Be there. Be there.
Yes. What about then, I think, you know, bringing this to a close, one of the most common things is just the sort of apathy or people, and this might not be what people vocalise, but even those who are pro-life might just in their hearts think, but I just can't be bothered.
Yeah.
If they're really honest.
Yeah.
What do you think can be said to sort of maybe help people deal with that when that's really kind of like something that they're struggling with?
I think it's bringing it back to the very first point you made of, if that's your brother or your sister or your family member, could you be bothered then?
Yeah.
And I think actually abortion does affect every single family. There's family members missing, there's links, and there's generations that will no longer be here because of those that have died through abortion. So, having that can't be bothered attitude, I think you really need to have a look at that. And
I think if they really recognised the difference that could be made by that one person, I know you've had some of the encounters that you shared before, and, I've been really blessed to see some of those. A lot of them we won't ever see. But, like you, I've had people saying that, literally just seeing the cross on my rosary beads was what they'd been wanting. I remember there was actually it was a Muslim girl in her teens who said, she told nobody, not her parents, not her boy's father, nobody, not her child's father, that she was pregnant. And she said to God, show me a sign. And she said the whole day she spent walking around Birmingham looking for a sign. And she said, God didn't show me a sign, she said. So she decided she was going to get an abortion. And as she was walking to the abortion centre, she saw me and my friend standing there, and she said she saw the rosary and she saw the cross. Now, considering this is a Muslim, and usually the cross isn't particularly a symbol for them, you could tell God was really touching the heart of that woman, And that was all it took. I didn't have to kind of have a long conversation with her. I mean, obviously we did actually end up, talking about the support that we could offer, but she just needed somebody to be there really for her. And equally, I remember somebody walking past on the other side of the road and calling over and saying to me, what are you doing? It was like, again, a sort of student-aged girl. And I explained to her, we're just here to offer help to people in crisis pregnancy situations. And she said, why weren't you here last week? She said, if you'd been there last week, I wouldn't have had my abortion. That's the difference that one person can make. And that might be, an individual who can only give 1 hour to the whole campaign, but that hour can literally mean life or death to somebody.
And what, especially when one of the campaigns is during Lent, what a great way to start your Lent. One of the women that I know, a friend of mine that's joined this year, the campaign, it's actually what she's given up for Lent, or what she's doing for Lent, is joining 40 days.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think then really just to kind of look at those all together, I think with a lot of the kind of excuses that might come into our head, I think if we're honest that there is some truth in them. It might be a long way to go. It might be that, my health will find it a little bit difficult. It might be that, I haven't really got that much time because I'm busy. Maybe I'm a student. Maybe I'm a working mum or dad, or, maybe I've retired and I've got, duties with my grandchildren, whatever it might be. Maybe I do feel fear. But that's only half the truth. And that's how Satan works. Satan doesn't work by just feeding you a complete lie, because that would be too obvious. Yeah. He works by feeding you a half-truth. Yeah. And that's what we need to be aware of. It's like, yes, it is a distance, but is it such a distance that I can't do anything? Yes, I am busy, but am I so busy that over the next 40 days I haven't got 1 hour I could give? Yes, it is fearful, but is that going to kill me? Yeah. So I think it's like being really honest about those half-truths and not allowing them to stop us following the truth, Jesus.
Absolutely. And like we said, that one line of, could you not be awake for 1 hour? Could you not stand there for 1 hour? Okay.
So if you haven't ever considered joining a 40 Days for Life or a pro-life vigil near an abortion centre where you are, please do consider that. There's a national 40 Days for Life website, or you can contact us at March for Life and we can help direct you to where the nearest vigil is to you. And I know there might be many fears or concerns in your head, but the amazing difference that you could make could literally mean life or death to somebody else. So please do consider joining a pro-life vigil near you. And if there's not one, maybe you could be the one to get it started. So please do like and share this podcast. And thank you for joining us today.